All right, can everyone see that well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So for today, our conversation, I want to do a quick introduction for anyone who doesn't know me. My name is Anthony Barrett. I oversee our diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility work for the Office of Workforce Strategy. Today, we're actually going to pass along to our co-chairs, Jay Williams, who's unfortunately not able to make it. I think he had another conflict, and then Cindy Bigelow, which I'll have her introduce herself, along with Monette Ferguson, who's not able to attend today, dealing with some personal matters. I'll pass it over to Cindy to do our introductions, and then after that, we'll probably have a quick conversation around how we've merged the DEIA with the Barrier to Employment Committee that was formerly. All right, Cindy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Bigelow, third generation CEO and president of Bigelow Tea, and I've been involved for a couple of years now working with the governor. Actually started with Malloy years back, and in the work that I've done with the Governor Lamont and the GWC, it's sort of morphed as it should over time, as it's continuing to morph, which we'll talk a little bit more, Anthony. But it's been a pleasure to be able to work with so many great people in the state and just try to make this the best state it can be.
All right, thank you. And then next, for anyone who's slightly a little bit older, like we previously shared, we are decided to merge the DEIA committee with the Barriers to Employment, and on the far left, you see Voltron, which hopefully some people remember what that is. So Voltron kind of serves as the 5 DEI committees, and then we merged together collectively with the Barrier to Employment to ultimately reduce many of the barriers. And we've obviously focused on adding accessibility as a major component to it. So I'll kind of pass it along to Cindy just to discuss some of the work that was being taken place during the Barrier to Employment committee meetings and some of their focus areas. And then after that, we'll dive into one of the particular areas that Cindy was doing some work on.
Yeah, well, originally, the access to the workforce had 5 categories. It had childcare, transportation, which we're going to focus more on, the benefit cliffs, supportive services, and sort of cross barrier, which is where there was a bucket for various different things that were obviously impacting access. So on the childcare, a lot of great work has been done by the committee and continues to be done. Social finance was the group of individuals that was really helped drive our committee. So in the case of childcare, just to give you an overview, a 30,000-foot overview, was first to sort of identify what the cost was, what's a fair cost for childcare, and then what the compensation program was going to look like by the state. So they worked with UConn on that. They have made a lot of headway there. This state is, as many states, is a childcare desert in many areas. After COVID, it was even worse. Thank God we started this before COVID. But the good news is Beth Bai and team is really continuing to drive this. I think social finance is still helping in that area as well. So I know that a lot of the initiatives that they have started are continuing to move forward, which is great. Skipping transportation for now, looking at the benefit cliffs, that was also very, very important. First, it's just trying to identify, for those of you who are not familiar, that the benefit cliffs means that you're getting benefits from the state, and unfortunately, if you take a job or a promotion, you lose too many benefits to make it worth it to try to even have the job. And so they're trying to really address that. First, they're trying to change policy, which is so important, so that you can have the benefits without this cliff, so that people can have jobs that are both sustainable and opportunity for growth. So they're really working on some policy changes there, as well as the tool that is required in order to educate the population about that. In the case of supportive services, they have worked on expanding the services for those in need, as well as trying to get that employer engagement. Same thing over in childcare. How are they getting more employer engagement? And I know that's a very active conversation and continues. They're surveying employers, et cetera. Cross barriers has got 2 basic categories. That's the SNAP and the ENT. First, expanding it, using funds that are available in the state and getting those to expand it, as well as being able to have the programs available to get more people into this program that are in need of this program. And then also the 211 tool, which I think anyone who uses the 211 tool knows that is something that needs a lot of attention. That I know if we want people to be able to access 211 to find out what jobs are available, what services are available, that needs to be worked on. I know that is also, again, that has been started with the committee, is continued to be worked on. And then lastly, and certainly not least, something we spend a lot of time on, and that's, I think, what we're going to stay focused on here is transportation, which I think so many of us understand. That is also a significant barrier. So one was expanding the access to public, which they did. They were very excited, a big win. Legislation passed the expansion of the UPass, but UPass is not something that everyone can use. Not everyone can use buses and trains, etc. So now they're really trying to expand the both affordable and individual services. I know 2Gen is working on that, and there's going to be additional conversation on what they're doing, so there's not duplicate work. And also how that's going to require, again, looking what's being done in other states, which is fantastic. And how do we use that as a model in here? So that's kind of where our committee was. And now, as I said, we're merging, which we're excited about, as well as really staying focused on transportation.
Okay, thank you, Cindy, and we'll come back to it a little bit. So as Cindy mentioned, so one of the things that we're going to, besides having the 5 DEI committee, we're also going to have a separate committee just directly focused on transportation. To Cindy's point, it's been a major cross-sectionality when it comes across all the groups, and transportation, childcare are always at the forefront of supports. So with some of the work that's being done with transportation, and as you can see on the map, and I could have Cindy probably talk a little bit further, but as you can see on the map, one on the left, a percentage of people with no vehicle in Connecticut. And if you look where it says 0 to 25% and 75% may have no vehicle, you see that there's a large part of individuals that have no vehicle in Connecticut, and a percentage of people using public transportation to get to work. So when you see all of this, you see that there's major opportunity. And then as you start looking at some of the rural areas, or people that work different shifts, first shift, second shift, third shift, if it's a particular marginalized population, if it's the returning citizen population, and may only get, if they're at a halfway house but looking for employment, if there are challenges and it's hard to get to work, and so looking at some of the opportunities is some of the work that the committee was doing before. I believe there was some research work that was done with, I forget exactly who it is, some research work that was done that identified some opportunities, like increasing car ownership, rideshare opportunities, and so forth, just trying to take away many of the barriers. So so what we're looking to do is just to continue to leverage some of the work that has begun. And what we are and will do is kind of tap some of the professionals from our current DEI group to help support some of the knowledge base, because these opportunities touch our youth committee, it touch our returning citizen, our person with disabilities. So we want to be able to make sure that we're very comprehensive in how we understand some of the barriers, but then also how we look at solutions to help alleviate many of those challenges. So Cindy, you want to talk anything else further on this particular population? And then also after Cindy mentions it, we also want to open it up to anyone else. This is not meant to be more so of a presentation, but more so of a discussion, so we can get ideas from this collective power of thought leaders.
Well, no, I just to support what you're saying, Anthony, is that you're right. The percentage of people that are really having access to public is very, very limited. And what are the other states doing that, there's only so much that the government can do. We need the government to be able to do so much. And then what can the public sector do? All right. So what can the businesses do? So, or the private sector, I guess I should say. So it really is trying to find out what's already working. What are the costs associated with it? Where's that funding going to come from? How is it going to be sustainable? And what's our priority list, right? That's really what the work needs to be. We want to execute and impact change. We want to make a difference. And, what's step 1, 2, and 3, I think is going to be critical.
All right, Alan, and then I think Leticia had a question.
What's being done to strengthen the the accessible transportation system that we have in every town. Here in Greenwich, we work 5 days during the daytime hours. So if I had a job that worked on the weekend, I couldn't use it. If I had a job that I worked a night shift, I couldn't use it. That's one issue. The other issue is there aren't enough instructors at the state level to recertify individuals to get them licenses where they can operate their vehicles with their hands and not their feet. I think that they only have like 1 or 2 individuals left in the whole state through the DMV that can certify people.
I know I can address the first one more than I can the second. The first one is a conversation that has been going on for a while, because I know at Bigelow Tea, the same thing. We have night shift, we have weekend shift, that it's not accessible. So we constantly are raising that conversation. I think those are the things that we have to prioritize in terms of what's going to be the things we're going to be trying to find solutions for. So it's been a conversation for over a year, and I can't tell you that that's actually been addressed. That is what is required. And certainly from what you're saying in terms of what's required to expand the opportunity for individuals to use transportation using hands and not necessarily your feet or legs, that I don't have enough information on. But again, that's something that has to be listed out as an issue. What are we going to be doing? For sure.
I'm more than happy to help any way I can.
It's great. Thank you. Anthony, you're gonna call on people, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I see Rick has a question.
My hand was up first. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. I appreciate that. Hi, Cindy. Hope you're well. I have a couple of things that I think are really important and directly related to this conversation. One is that the Inflation Reduction Act actually has about $27 billion over the next 2 years to specifically and directly address transportation. They're doing it under the lens of environmental justice and emissions, but I promise you it's directly related to this discussion in transportation, specifically because 55% of that 27 billion has to go to disadvantaged communities directly. And there's a definition for that that actually relates to this DEI lens. That said, the other group that is working on two other groups actually that are working on transportation that I think are very key to this discussion is the GC3, the Governor's Council on Climate Change, which has an initiative specific to transportation and those environmental justice EPA funds and DOE funds. I could send that information to whoever's most appropriate at the Office of Workforce Strategies on how that funding will break down for our state specifically. The other group that is working on this is the Department of Transportation through a multimodal transit discussion. I'm wondering how we could break the silos to be sure that we connect the dots between GC3, the Connecticut Green Bank, who's also working on transportation, and the Department of Transportation, as well as the Department of Energy and Environmental Protections, all which have resources that might solve the problem. And then the last thing I want to say before I pass the mic is that on an equity lens, it is really important to consider the idea that individual transportation may not be the broadest solution and may not help as many people as possible, whereas addressing infrastructure issues that are systemically exclusionary to people who want to work in the evening, in the weekend, or in an area that doesn't have a bus stop, that would be a statewide approach to addressing the problem. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for everything you just brought forward. That's one of the issues that we are seeing and that's the reason why they blended this with, as one team, because there is so much silo going on, Letitia, there's no question. So, I know, as I mentioned, Jen is doing a lot of work on this. I think just identifying starting point, right? I said, what's 1, what's 2, what's 3 in terms of steps. I think identifying who are all the different groups that are working on this is critical, and funding and what they're working on, and then trying to streamline it. Because I do think there's a lot of wonderful people doing a lot of wonderful work, as we indicated even earlier in the big meeting, in silos. So my thought is just getting a list out of all the groups that are working on it and what they're working on. it's a huge issue.
All right, thank you, Leticia. Next, Rick, and then after that, Dave.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rick Sebastian with the Kennedy Center, soon to be rebranded as the Kennedy Collective. My question, my comment, the area for consideration has to do with job creation as it relates to transportation solution. Most of our employees, Kennedy Center employs people with significant disabilities, and most of our employees, like Alan said, are limited and locked inside a Monday through Friday until 5 o'clock timeframe. One of the things that we're exploring at a national level as well as here in Connecticut is using our own population as gig employees and looking at taking people that are receiving services from DEMAS, for example, and having them go through some travel training so that they become Uber-esque drivers, but become independent drivers that are linked with people that need to get to Bigelow Tea, for example, on a night shift. We're also looking at the veteran community, particularly with a bent on service-disabled veterans, and again, having those individuals become gig drivers so that we can deal with this transportation dilemma that we have, not using the transit system that exists and does have its limitations, because I live in a neighborhood without a bus stop, but we identify those individuals that have disabilities, that have other barriers to employment, that are working in nonprofit organizations or working in business organizations, and linking those three entities together. So I don't know how we're making decisions on what the grant dollars or how the grant dollars are going to be expended, but I would ask that we do our best to advocate that we broaden that and include the actual people that have the barrier to employment as part of the solution for employment.
Thank you, Rick. Dave?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Dokas. I'm the Director for the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services. I just wanted to say how much I agree with the points being made. Transportation issues are a massive barrier to individuals with disabilities in accessing competitive integrated employment. We have sent through the years a lot of people to Rick's program for travel training, which is kind of an essential ingredient for many in accessing public transportation, but times come for a much broader solution and creative solution to try to leverage coworkers and others into the transportation of individuals who would not otherwise have access based on the inavailability of bus routes or public transportation in their area. Also wanted to circle back to the question about Alan's question about the access to certification of individuals who use adaptive technology to drive. Bureau of Rehabilitation Services has a driver training program for individuals with disabilities. We employ 3 staff. They work very closely with the Department of Motor Vehicles to train and certify individuals in their ability to use assistive technology, and would pass along those certifications to DMV, who indeed is the licensing agency for those individuals. So through BRS and through some private contracted entities who now have qualified people to assist with the training around utilizing adaptive technology, there is some capacity in the state to facilitate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Next, Shawanda.
Yeah, I would just add, I think someone mentioned about the siloing in terms of resources, but I think they're siloing in terms of towns too. If Connecticut is going to be a viable, real city, like place, I think the transportation has got to connect town to towns more frequently, longer hours, because people don't just work in their town. They may be looking for jobs. If I'm trying to work at the Amazon, but it's 3 towns over, it makes me employable in Connecticut and but I can't get there. So it's not just in my town, it's, if I'm looking to stay in Connecticut and trying to find a job, it needs to be really towns working together to make this system, this bus system at least. I mean, at some point, they'd have to look at the train system too, but I think that will take longer because of the infrastructure of it. But I think with a bus, if towns are working together to get common routes and longer times where people can work night shifts and work morning shifts or third shift, I think we'll be better for that as well.
I
And
love
pool
that.
resources, of course, pool resources from town to town.
No, thank you. These are all great points. Thank you. All right. I think I see anybody else. My computer's a little delayed.
Mr. Barrett, Shawanda's hand is up. I'm not sure if she has something to add or if it was from before.
No, I'm finished.
My slide is frozen.
Well, while your slide is froze, I want to say one other thing that I think is important to think about as we're talking about the clean energy transition and we're talking about carbon emissions and we're talking about electrifying vehicles all across the state of Connecticut and putting EV chargers to the $2 billion at the Green Bank. We might want to consider carbon emissions about Ubers. We're talking about having people drive back and forth to drive people around while at the same time talking about taxing gas and making everybody use EVs. It would seem counterintuitive to not connect those two discussions.
No, those are great points. I actually saw, I was watching something this morning. I saw Uber said, by 2030, they probably will have all electrical vehicles, all their vehicles. And when it drives Uber, will all be electrical vehicles. So I think it's a great point, just to mention that as well. All right, next, just want to transition. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for everyone else who commented on the work around transportation. It's great that you guys have said so much, and it's great that we're recording it because we have to go back and actually take in all that information that was just said, because there's some extremely great value add for us to really put some.
I was writing furiously.
Yes, yeah, it's being recorded, Cindy. All right, the next thing that our office is working on is a return shift for getting women back to work. As you start looking at it's been a national problem with just getting women back to work, childcare, transportation, all those things kind of fall in line. But as we look at, Connecticut is actually getting back to pre-pandemic numbers. However, there's still a large part of women that we need to be able to get back. And what we saw was that 1.7 million more jobs than men were lost during that period. And so our office has a statute in really developing a comprehensive plan on how well do we work across institutions, nonprofits, CBOs, and also childcare, transportation, everything we just mentioned, to really put together a comprehensive plan. How do we really attract, retain, and get women back to work? So this one, I'll kind of open it up to everyone else that's listening, and the questions here: how can higher education institution, if anyone has relationships on nonprofit organizations, professional businesses, and childcare providers and transit promote women return to work initiatives? Like, how do we really help tackle this issue? Because this is it's a national issue. And so one of the things that we will do eventually is really look at some of the data that's what's happening in our state, understand the numbers, understand some of the marginalized populations that are largely impacted. I know Black and brown women are some of the largest impact when it comes to return to work or not returning at that pace. What are some of those challenges? And how do we provide some of these opportunities, train? We know childcare is a common issue, and then looking at what other states are doing is some of the work that we're also doing. We recognize that I believe it's in Utah that has a program for women return to work where they offer the state has opened up job opportunities directly focused on getting women back to work. Then also they've also, second part in Utah, what they've done is also developed two pathways to getting women back to work at state colleges and local universities. So they're really directly focused on those two particular pathways. And then in Hawaii, what they focused on and getting women back to work is increased funding and supports directly for childcare to fund particular childcare programs directly, increase the funding to support them, but then also probably pay increases for those childcare workers to sustain those childcare workers, because that's been a major issue, is the pay and transferable skills for childcare workers as you look for workforce pathways and development. So to the group, this is a major issue, and we understand, and some of the barriers why they're not returning is obviously low pay is a major one, and pay equity and being inclusive in the workplace and so forth. So just want to tap into the rest of this group and just, get some feedback and some conversation going on what can we do better as a state to really promote returning women back to work in a very successful way. So go ahead, Leticia. I see your hands up. I don't know if it's from before, but I'm assuming it's from now.
Well, God bless you. And I'm sorry that I just can never wait to take my turn. But anybody else who wants to go before me, feel free to take the moment now. That said, I did drop a bunch of stuff in the chat, Mr. Barrett, because I'm actually going to bring up something that I haven't heard in this room, and that's the cost of health insurance for working people. I'm a working woman and 27 other people work for me. And the one thing that they say to me every day is that it's really hard for women to work because health insurance in the state of Connecticut for a family of 4 is about $1,300 a month if you have to get it through the portal. And if you don't work, guess how much it costs? Nothing. And my copay is $70 every time I go to my primary care physician. And it's $150 when I get my like every 3 months scans for my breast cancer. But it's the same for my employees who make $50,000 or $60,000 a year. So if my employees are making $60,000 a year, which isn't nothing to sneeze about with a high school diploma, they still can't afford to work because of the cost of health insurance for working families in our state. The second thing I want to mention is childcare, which already came up earlier, but I'm going to say it in a different capacity. We talked about benefits cliffs, but in a way that I find different. I think that what's the problem I've seen over the 25 years of my adult life is that in communities of color, oftentimes it becomes so difficult because of the cost of the many things that are given to us. So Section 8 vouchers, EBT, childcare, health insurance. And then when we're working past 6 months, they all end at the same time. And suddenly you realize, why did I lose my Section 8? I could have lived for free for 20 years and passed it down to my daughter or my son. So those are the things I want to bring forward at the beginning of the call. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a comment on the benefit cliff, not the insurance one, which is, that's a very chilling statistic that you shared that we should all be more aware of. But that's the whole issue on the benefit cliffs is exactly that. And that's really what they are. And again, I'm not the ones, the power to be, that are making those changes and those policy changes, but that's what they're really recognizing, because you need people to be to be motivated to want to have a job and to get a promotion. But when you lose your benefits like that, you can't for your family. You can't, it's not like you're being difficult. You can't for your family. So yeah, that's the problem.
All right. Anybody else? Not. Ooh. I asked that and I got 5 all at one time, so I don't know. We'll go with the first on screen. I see Melvette.
Hi, I'll be quick. Thanks. So something to consider why some women aren't returning to the workforce as quickly as others. In addition to what's been said already, I mean, women are looking for flexibility. The pandemic taught us a lot of things, that some of the things we thought weren't possible actually are possible. It is possible to work remotely for many jobs. And so women want flexibility. They want some of the flexibility that they saw happen and take place during the pandemic. They want that same flexibility. We also see that some workers were even more productive. But especially when women are the caregivers in their family, not only are they taking care of children, but maybe adult parents, right? They need some more flexibility to be able to care for themselves and their family members and also get better pay. So I would just add that to the mix as well.
Thank you. Next, Alice.
Hi, hello, everybody. I just wanted to mention that these are all critical issues facing women, and they're longstanding issues, many of them that we have just not been able to penetrate. But I just want to acknowledge that this is a moment where we have more resources than we've had in a very long time to address many of these issues. So if we think about the resources that are available through, just take the community college as an example, where we have the PAC program, which offers, free community college for those who are not eligible for other resources. We do have childcare and transportation resources for them. We do have online, thanks to the last speaker for recognizing that, we did learn some lessons in the pandemic, and some of that is that online classes can be the right match for some people. So I do think it's really incumbent upon us, before all these resources go away, which they will, in many cases, that we've tried to figure out why, having a big bucket of resources is still not addressing the need, still not breaking down the barriers. And so we've got to do more than throw money at the issues, because it's more systemic than that. It's more transient than that. Sorry, my language is escaping me. And I just said, again, think we've got a lot of things in our toolkit to address these issues, but we're still not penetrating the problem. And I think it's just great for us to have the opportunity to think that through. But we would love to see more women returning to our colleges and universities, and have seen a slide after the pandemic. And though there are resources there, they may not be matching the needs that women have, and just would really love to have people continue to think about how to address those.
Thank you. Shawanda, and then Mary.
I kind of concur with all of it. I think in terms of the benefits that are out there that she just mentioned, it's not as well known as people think, and maybe where these things are being promoted are not where people are looking, or, so there's got to be maybe more emphasis on getting that word out in a bigger way. I think the other piece is, when we talk about Alice, losing benefits because you got a job, and, maybe you'll get a $1 increase that now takes you out of the realm of qualification for services that keeps you in quality housing, or, insurance. It's all of those factors. And I think, as Melvette said, the ability to have some flexibility. So I think it's a combination. I don't think there's any one thing. I think there's a combination of things, and there may not be one right fix. I think there's got to be some flexibility, probably on thresholds of benefits, particularly for single, women, or, women with children. And I think businesses also have to, we've seen through COVID that, like she said, we can do some things remotely, and people have to get out of the old mode that if I'm not in front of you, I'm not working, and really kind of see that as a labor force of, women that are home, but that could be doing, work, from that avenue, depending on the type of work it is. So I think it's a real combination of all of the factors that were mentioned. There's no wrong answer, that was given. It's looking at all of those things and seeing what we can do in terms of flexibility across the board in all of those areas.
Great points, Shawanda. Thank you. And Alice, great points. Mary?
She's mute.
You're muted. And just for a time check, we may only have about 2 more minutes or so.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you that.
Okay, I'll talk fast. Mimi Haley with the National Youth Employment Coalition. I'm down in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I chair the youth committee, the youth subcommittee. I just wanted to just put it out there, and I'm sure there's been a lot of thinking on this, but the non-traditional careers for women as well, I think really coming up with some strategies to be able to get the word out on some of the higher paying jobs that are out there. I just, as an example, I have a niece who did not graduate from college, and she's 22 years old. She just got a job after taking a 6-week course in coding for $90,000. So I'm like, wow, like this is impressive. And so there are jobs that are out there, and I think a lot of women, don't know about these jobs, and they're, so I think that marketing piece is really important, and just putting it out there. I was a single mom with not a lot of support. I don't have family around. I live in Fairfield, and to have a community that supports single mothers, and a state that supports single mothers in different ways and really more intentionally. I think single mothers are sometimes the best people to hire. I'm prejudiced, but they can multitask. They can, they've dealt with a lot of things. So, I think that just making sure that all those careers are out there, and in technology, but also construction. The Department of Labor is doing some wonderful things, the Women's Bureau, on getting the word out about different types of construction jobs for women. And there's some great examples across the country of that.
Thank you.
We're about to close, 57 seconds.
Yeah, I guess, who's next? Alice?
As a male, can I jump in here, Anthony,
Yeah,
real
go
quick?
ahead, Rick.
Relax regulations on where childcare centers can be conducted. Had we had the opportunity to open up childcare centers here at the Kennedy Center, our women, our mothers and our fathers would have continued working.
Really.
That's a great point.
Yep.
Thank you.
Very, very good point. Thank you for saying that, Rick.
Well, I think this was great stuff, a lot. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, everyone. I think it was great. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time, but I really, really, truly appreciate everyone's input, and can't wait to review some of the slides. And
Thanks, guys. Thank you. See you in a little
thank you.
bit.